Alexa resume my book?
And much too late in the day for them. So listen, Tom. Listen very carefully. All together now. Follow the bouncing ball. Tom listened. The voice from the balloon explained. It explained everything. When it was done, it popped in one final flash of light, and Tom began to dress. Two. Audra. Audra also had nightmares. She awoke with a start, sitting bolt upright in bed, the sheet pulled around her waist, her small breasts moving with her quick, agitated breathing. Like Tom's, her dreaming had been a jumbled, distressful experience. Like Tom, she had had the sensation of being someone else, or rather, of having her own consciousness deposited and partially submerged in another body and another mind. She'd been in a dark place with a number of others around her, and she had been aware of an oppressive sensation of danger. They were going into the danger deliberately, and she wanted to scream at them to stop, to explain to her what was happening, but the person with whom she had merged seemed to know and to believe it was necessary. She was also aware that they were being chased, and that their pursuers were catching up little by little. Bill had been in the dream, but his story about how he had forgotten his childhood must have been on her mind, because in her dream, Bill was only a boy, 10 or 12 years old. He still had all his hair. She was holding his hand, and was dimly aware that she loved him very much, and that her willingness to go on was based on the rock-solid belief that Bill would protect her and all of them, that Bill, Big Bill, would somehow bring them through this and back into the daylight again. Oh, but she was so terrified. They came to a branching of many tunnels, and Bill stood there looking from one to the next. And one of the others, a boy with his arm in a cast, which glimmered a ghostly white in the darkness, spoke up. "That one, Bill. The bottom one." "You sure?" "Yes." And so they had gone that way, and then there had been a door, a wee wooden door, no more than 3 feet high, the sort of door you might see in a fairy tale book. And there had been a mark on the door. She could not remember what that mark had been, what strange rune or symbol, but it had brought all her terror to a focusing point, and she had yanked herself out of that other body, that girl's body, whoever Beverly she might have been. She awoke bolt upright, in a strange bed, sweaty, wide-eyed, gasping as if she had just run a race. Her hands flew to her legs, half expecting to find them wet and cold with the water she had been walking through in her head. But she was dry. Disorientation followed. This was not their home in Topanga Canyon or the rented house in Fleet. It was no place. Limbo furnished with a bed, a dresser, 2 chairs, and a TV. Oh, God, come on, Audra! She scrubbed her hands viciously across her face, and that sickening feeling of mental vertigo receded. She was in Derry, Maine, where her husband had grown through a childhood he claimed no longer to remember. Not a familiar place to her, or a particularly good place by its feel, but at least a known place. She was here because Bill was here, and she would see him tomorrow at the Derry townhouse. Whatever terrible thing was wrong here, whatever those new scars on his hands meant, they would face it together. She would call him, tell him she was here, then join him. After that, well, actually she had no idea what came after that. The vertigo, that sense of being in a place that was really no place, was threatening again. When she was 19, she had done a whistle-stop tour with a scraggy little production company. 40 not-so-wonderful performances of Arsenic and Old Lace in 40 not-so-wonderful towns and small cities. All of this in 47 not-so-wonderful days. They began at the Peabody Dinner Theater in Massachusetts and ended up at Play It Again Sam in Sausalito. And somewhere in between, in some Midwestern town like Ames, Iowa, or Grand Isle, Nebraska, or maybe Jubilee, North Dakota, she had awakened like this in the middle of the night, panicked by disorientation, unsure what town she was in, what day it was, or why she was wherever she was. Even her name seemed unreal to her. That feeling was back now. Her bad dreams had carried over into her waking, and she felt a nightmarish, free-floating terror. The town seemed to have wrapped itself around her like a python. She could sense it, and the feelings it produced were not good. She found herself wishing that she had heeded Freddy's advice and stayed away. Her mind fixed on Bill, grasping at the thought of him, the way a drowning woman would grip at a spar, a life preserver, anything that... We all float down here, Audra. Floats. A chill raced through her, and she crisscrossed her arms across her naked breasts. She shivered and saw goosebumps ripple their way up her flesh. For a moment it seemed to her that a voice had spoken aloud, but inside her head, as if there was an alien presence in there. Am I going crazy? God, is that it? No, her mind responded. It's just disorientation, jet lag, worry over your man. Nobody's talking inside your head. Nobody... We all float down here, Audra, a voice said from the bathroom. It was a real voice, real as houses, and sly and dirty and evil. You'll float too. The voice uttered a fruity little giggle that dropped in pitch until it sounded like a clogged drain bubbling thickly. Audra cried out and pressed her hands against her mouth. I didn't hear that. She said it out loud, daring the voice to contradict her. It didn't. The room was silent. Somewhere, far away, a train whistled in the night. Suddenly, she needed Bill so badly that waiting until daylight seemed impossible. She was in a standardized motel room exactly like the other 39 units in the place, but suddenly it was too much. Everything. When you started hearing voices, it was just too much. Too creepy. She seemed to be slipping back into the nightmare she'd so lately escaped. She felt scared and terribly alone. It's worse than that, she thought. I feel dead.